After quitting our jobs, packing our bags and saying goodbye to friends and family, we jumped on a one-way flight to Thailand and our year of travelling begins. With 4 months to explore Thailand, our plan is to fly straight into the south and travel up to the north. Once we'd landed at the international Bangkok airport, we had to transfer to the other Bangkok airport to get our flight down to the bottom of Thailand in Trang. After arriving safe and sound at the domestic Bangkok airport, we grabbed some dinner courtesy of Mackie D's and headed to our gate. It was at this point our names got called out on the airport speakers and we had to run back to security to get our portable chargers out of our bags. After that kerfuffle, we jumped on our plane down to Trang. This was our first time being outside in Thailand and Jesus Christ, it's hot. After collecting our bags from the world's smallest airport, we ordered a Grab, which is like the Asian Uber, and headed to our hotel. Then we dumped off our bags and had a little stroll around the local village. After getting some supplies, we headed back to our hotel with some much needed sleep. Well, after trying and failing to sleep because of the jet lag, we instead ordered our first ever Thai meal on Grab. The next day, we headed back to town to get some supplies for our day adventures ahead. Tried my first ever 7-Eleven toasty, 8.5 out of 10. Also tried this Red Bull syrup in a bottle, 9 out of 10. We then ordered a Grab taxi, headed down to the south of Trang for a canopy walk. On our walk, saw tons of creepy crawlies, animals and plants that I literally didn't even know existed. It was a bonus that I also got to fly my drone for the first time in Thailand. It's great. After finishing up at the canopy walk, we headed over to our next stop of the day, a cave tour. We didn't really know what we were getting ourselves into with this cave tour, so I've got Em here to make a few comments.
When we read the signs that said don't go in if you're claustrophobic, I didn't quite anticipate that it would be that small. My nose was literally scraping on the top of the cave as the man turned my face so that I didn't hit it.
After a pretty traumatic cave tour, we headed back to our hotel and explored the local market. And that summarises our time in Trang. Next stop, Koh Lipe. After a 2-hour minicab ride, we arrived at the ferry port for Koh Lipe. We then paid the national park fee, pier fee, and jumped on our boat. After a smooth transfer to Koh Lipe, we dropped off our bags at the hotel, checked out the pool, then headed to the main street of Koh Lipe, the walk-in street. We then found a place for dinner. We got 2 pad thais and a garlic bread. The next day, we headed down for the beach for a spectacular sunrise. Now, strolling around these beaches and chilling on these nice resorts is nice, but it is such a wake-up call to stroll around the local housing as well. After grabbing some food, we realised a few of our friends from home would be travelling through Koh Lipe as well. So we met up, arranged the boat tour, then hit the town. Cheers, brother, boy. The next day, we headed to the beach to get some quick snorkeling in before our boat trip with our friends. We grabbed some supplies from 7-Eleven and jumped in our longtail boat. After a few stops around the Koh Lipe area for snorkeling, we stopped at Koh Adang for a sunset. The next day, we hired a kayak and headed over to one of the nearby smaller islands. After a pretty active morning, we met back up with our friends for our last night on Koh Lipe. The next day, we headed down to the pier, grabbed our tickets, and then made our way to Phi Phi Islands via a quick stop in Koh Lanta.
This was a pretty bumpy ride to say the least, and I thought I was going to crack a rib at one point, but we made it.
After a quick stop, we got our tickets from Koh Lanta to Phi Phi Islands. This half of the journey was a lot smoother, but nevertheless, we were grateful to be on dry land.
What a good egg carrying all the big bags for me.
After dropping our bags off at our hotel, we explored the main strip of Phi Phi and got some food. We spent most of the day just chilling at the beach, and in the evening watching poor girls almost get set on fire.
We got up super early so it was still nice and cool and headed up the viewpoint. I thought this was the top of the viewpoint, but then Tom told me this was 1 out of 3 and I thought I was going to cry. So we kept on climbing and finally made it to number 3. After admiring the pretty views, it was time to go back down.
Unlike Lipe, which has a problem with stray dogs, Phi Phi was full of stray cats.
After a quick breakfast, we learnt our first travel hack, which is to stay in the cheap hotels and pay to go in the fancy hotel pools.
After getting our money's worth at the fancy hotel, I noticed the tide was out, so I headed over for some rock crawling.
And this was the walk up to our hellhole room, which resembled a prison cell. Wasn't a fan of that one, I must be honest.
Yeah, I forgot to film the room, but to be honest, as Em said, not much to see. After dinner, we headed to the boxing bar to watch drunk tourists compete for more alcohol. After grabbing a pretty staple meal by now, a 7-Eleven toastie, we headed to the Ibiza pool party where we spent most of the day. After chilling by the pool for most of the day, I then headed back to the sea for some more rock boarding, where I saw loads more creatures. Now, I was doing this barefoot, but then I saw the sea urchins. After dinner, we headed back to the ring for our final night on Phi Phi. And so begins another travel day, this time to Ao Nang in Krabi. After being met by our transfer at the ferry, we headed to our hotel in Ao Nang. As per routine by now, we dropped off our bags and then hit the town. After getting up nice and early, we jumped on a long-tail boat over to the famous Railay Beach.
After a lovely morning kayaking around, I got a little bit hungry after all my hard work that I put in, so we went and found some food. Then Tom asked me to do a skin fade on his hair, and we later found out he only bought one attachment, so I just had to shave the whole thing off. Then we headed out for dinner in town, and I found my very own shop.
We then took a stroll around the night market and experienced our first rainfall after 10 days in Thailand. Nice. After any heavy rain in Thailand, the humidity pumps right up, so we quickly ordered a grab back to our hotel and jumped in the hotel pool. Today is bike day. We hired our first bike in Thailand and I took it out for a quick spin. After building up my confidence, I asked them to jump on and we rode away to Banon Thale Lake. Following a couple of mandatory drone shots, we then jumped on a kayak and headed deep into the mangroves.
It was at this point Tom decided he wanted to go for a dip, so he jumped off the kayak, tipping me and everything else on the kayak with him. We later realised his phone was meant to be on the kayak too. After totally freaking out and looking for what felt like hours, we asked a Thai man for help, and he found it within about 30 seconds. The relief was real. Lucky to be filming this.
We then jumped back on the bike and headed to Monkey Trail. After a steep walk up and down a hill to a nice beach, we then headed back to find the monkeys right where we started. We then had some dinner, headed to the shops, and headed back to the hotel with all our new purchases. After making it back safe and sound, we woke up early the next day for our hike up Dragon Crest Mountain.
After one of the hardest and hottest climbs up I think we've ever done, we enjoyed the views at the top for an hour or so before our shaky legs took us back down.
Later, we headed to town, watched the fire show, and grabbed some dinner. For our last day in Ao Nang, we made use of the pool, watched sunset in town, and then got some supplies for our journey the next day. Today, we wave goodbye to our favourite accommodation so far and head on our long coach journey to Phuket. In Phuket, we followed our standard routine, checked out the room, chucked our bags in, got a bike, and then hit the town. Big reveal. Check out this view. Oh. Today we popped to Karam Beach, one of the best rated beaches in Phuket. We then headed to town and booked our upcoming excursions in Khao Sok and the Free Island tour. We then took our first walk down Bangla Road, and yes, that is a Thai Michael Jackson. We then scooted back to town, fueled up, quickly checked out what Bangla Road is like in the day. Very weird. Before heading off, we quickly grabbed some fruit and then headed on our way to Monkey Hill.
The first half of the walk was really enjoyable. Saw loads of little cute puppies and some cute monkeys. And the second half of the walk up to the viewpoint was where I decided that I actually didn't like the cute looking monkeys as they stole the bottle of Coke out of Tom's rucksack. And then when we got to the top, they stole the hairband out of my hair. Cheeky little monkeys. Terrifying spider. After finally making it back through mobs of vicious monkeys, we finally made it back and dropped off the bike. Then we headed out for some dinner as our last night as a two before my friend Abby arrives in the morning. The next morning we headed to our new accommodation, which was very fancy and it had a gym. Woohoo! Not only did it have a gym, it also had a very nice rooftop pool.
On for the books.
This was the first time on our trip that Tom ran out of clothes, so he had to wear my cream t-shirt.
Not very impressed.
Hi guys!
Today my friend Abby arrived, who will be travelling with us for 3 weeks. We just had a chilled day by the pool and practiced our water aerobics. We spent the evening showing her around Bangla Road and of course, sweaty fat thighs called for talc.
We thought that we'd ease Abby into travelling by spending a chill day at Patong Beach, but Abby had different ideas. She immediately hired a speedboat for us to be pulled along the water at 1,000 miles an hour. After a quick call off at the pool, we headed out for dinner. We popped into a couple of the go-go bars down Bangla Road, and let's just say they don't leave a lot to the imagination. In the morning, we headed on a sightseeing day of big Buddhas and stunning temples. After a lovely sightseeing day and a stunning sunset, we headed back out to town, where we got some dinner and Abby treated us to our first Thai massage. Smile, guys. Today is Three Islands tour day, where we'll be beaching and snorkeling around. Of course, the rock pools were calling me again. This time, I saw loads of crabs. And today is water park day. And Amanda Water Park is definitely worth spending the day there. So thanks Abby for convincing us to go. For our last day in Phuket, before we head to Khao Sok, we decided to spend the day hiking around one of the nearby jungles. Oh, and I saw my first ever giant orb weaver up close. Woohoo! After a tiring day hiking around the jungle, we headed back to the apartment for sunset, then back out again to Bangla Road for the final time. And here goes another travel day. This time, a 150-kilometre journey to Khao Sok. After getting picked up from our hotel by minivan, we then got dropped at the bus station and jumped on a bus all the way to Khao Sok. After arriving in Khao Sok, we grabbed a taxi to our hotel. With the hotel being in the middle of Khao Sok National Park, a jungle, it was as glamorous as you'd expect. Once we'd gotten our bearings, we then booked a night safari, a full day tour, and a night on the floating cabins. With not a lot of time to waste in Khao Sok, we headed on our night safari straight away. Our guide was amazing and could literally spot a tiny gecko from 100 metres away, whereas Em and I were stumbling over roots and rocks in the darkness. We saw tons of wildlife, including stick insects, snakes, tarantulas, and even the odd sleeping monkey. Yeah. Big boy. Yeah, wow. See the sun?
Oh, the stick insect.
Yeah. Wow. We were up bright and early the next day for our full day jungle hike. Now, I don't think I mentioned it before, but that high-pitched sound you hear in the jungles isn't something wrong with the microphone. It's a tiny bug called a cicada, and it is deafening. We should have really learned our lesson from our hike up Dragon Crest Mountain, but nothing really prepares you for the humidity in the jungles.
When I first asked the man what this poo was on the floor and he told me elephant poo, I laughed at him thinking he was joking, but turns out he wasn't, and the elephants had come down here because it's so dry they needed a drink from the river.
That is literally gigantic. When I first asked our guide why he carried a catapult around, he said monkeys. But to be honest, all I saw him use it for was to ping rocks at other tourists. After a nice morning seeing waterfalls and wildlife, we stopped for a quick snack and then headed on deeper into the jungle. After a stunning day hiking through the jungle, we arrived back at camp, but the insects weren't done with us just yet. Don't attack my phone, please. Today, we head to Chao Lang Lake in Khao Sok for our night on a floating cabin. To say this is a tourist attraction is an understatement. It's packed with people, but you are split off into groups, and our guide, Rookie, was really nice. Our group jumped on our long-tail boat and headed to our accommodation. Following a lovely journey checking out the stunning scenery, we arrived at the main eating area of our floating cabins, checked out our room and sent the drone for a quick spin. We then had a quick buffet lunch and headed on what would become a very chaotic day. With amazing scenery on the drive over, we were in very good spirits. But the rain chasing us behind very much foreshadowed what was going to come next.
And this is when the hellish afternoon began. It all started to go wrong when we hit a rock and the boat nearly capsized. We were then instructed by two very stressed Thai men to move to the end of the boat, where all of the men stood out in the pouring rain and the women sheltered underneath the canopy. By this point, the children were crying. After both the Thai men getting into the water, full of humongous lizards, trying and failing to dislodge our boat, they called another boat which came and saved us, and we had to climb across onto it. After finally making it to the jungle an hour later, as we dismounted the boat, we had to climb up a steep clay hill, which I can best describe as a slip and slide. After clambering over the hill and finally making it to the side, we began our walk through the jungle.
Scorpion spider. They have arms like a scorpion to grab food to eat.
After completing our walk in the jungle, which was cut an hour and a half short because of our traumatic boat experience earlier in the day, it was at this point I took my shoe off and realised a leech had been on my toe underneath my Birkenstock for the whole walk. After freaking out and flicking the leech off, my toe then bled for the whole journey home.
For our last day on Khao Sok Lake, we took a scenic boat ride around the area. Before we actually left our accommodation, we had a quick breakfast and a quick paddle around the area. Now on dry land, and before our group parts ways, we stopped at a stunning viewpoint. And so begins another travel day, this time via minivan and then a sleeper ferry to the tropical island of Koh Tao. We were dropped at a bus station and arm wrestled into oblivion by some little Thai kids. Our transfer finally came. We then checked out the ferry, dropped our bags off and got some food. For my meal, I got chicken pad thai. This was the kitchen. Not the worst I've had so far. We then jumped back aboard the sleeper ferry and snuggled in for our night ahead. And that summarises our first month in Thailand. Next stop, Koh Tao.